What's going on, everyone? In today's episode, I'm excited to be joined for a second time by my friend Jean-Yves Mageau. If you haven't seen our first episode, Jean-Yves is an incredible natural bodybuilder who I met for the first time in person when we were both competing at the 2023 WMBF Ontario. In our conversation, we talk all about recovery in the context of making continued muscle growth progress. I'm talking about everything from nutrition, sleep, stress management, and supplements. Jean-Yves shares his experience and knowledge on the topic, including how he incorporates recovery into his own personal routine. Before we get into it, if you find yourself enjoying the episode, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out. All right, let's dive in. How's your training going at this point? I know the last time that we met up, our last episode together, I think it was around May. So that would have been like around 4 or 5 months ago, somewhere around there.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
So
So,
how has your training been going?
really good overall. I've been in a steady surplus for like 2 years at this point. So things are obviously rolling really well. When you're in a surplus, you're recovering really well. At least you should be if other things are accounted for. So training has been really good. Like I was just saying to you off air, I was on vacation a couple weeks ago, so that also ended up being about a 6 or 7 day completely off the gym, which hasn't happened probably in that 2 year span. I take like mini vacations away from the gym as required. You can call them deloads if you want. Um, so yeah, so now I'm at like 2 weeks post deload, which I find to be the funnest part, right? When you get kind of your motor patterns refreshened up after that 1 week off, your strength is starting to come back, or not necessarily coming back, but it's easier to attain at least after that like desensitization period of the first week after a deload. So right now, specifically this exact moment, training is really, really good. And overall, for the last like couple years, since my last show, it's also been very good just because of the bounce back effect from the show, the hormones being stable, and being in a steady surplus for basically that whole 2 year period, except for maybe one or two mini cuts that were anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, pretty aggressive just to get the fat off so I can go back into a surplus.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm curious actually, now that you bring up the vacation that you just got back from and that you spent a full week not
Yeah.
training at all. I'm actually curious about that. That's actually something that I struggle with, is taking
Mhm.
time. Like me personally, I struggle with taking, more than 2 days off in a row or even more than 1 day off in a row. So,
Yeah.
I guess I wanna know more about, like, the positives that you experienced or whatever you experienced having taken that much time off from lifting. But I also am curious about, did you find it was tough? Because I know you love lifting. Did you find it was tough to kinda let go of no training for 7 days, or were you like, "Hey, like, I'm ready to take a little bit of a break. I'm cool with it, and, the recovery, the time away is welcome."
Yeah, if I had it my way, I probably would have trained maybe 2 or 3 times, but because of like the nature of being on vacation and wanting to take advantage of the limited amount of time that we had, me and my wife, that is, yeah, I kind of just accepted that it probably would end up being completely time off from the gym. I did bring some stuff with me in case I did end up training, but if you kind of program in your mind that that's just the way it's going to be, it tends to be easier to accept when it happens. I love training as much as you. So I completely get it. Like the 1 or 2 days off in a row thing right now, if you ask me to do it, I really don't want to do it. Training is way too much fun for me to want to take that time off. But whenever I've been either forced because of like injuries or life circumstances to take extended periods of time, meaning like more than 2 or 3 days in a row, I've always found that I come back healthier, stronger. Not only that, but just mentally reinvigorated because the fact that I haven't been able to get my fix, if you will, you just come back with like so much more ambition to train hard, which sometimes is a good thing. Most of the time, it's probably a good thing, but sometimes it's dangerous because you might overshoot your return
Mhm.
to the gym and end up in a position where you need to recover again. So, Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, it's funny with me when I take, like, more than 2 days off in a row, 2, 3 days off, after, like, the 2nd day, my I can, like, feel it. I can feel something. Like, I can feel, like I mean, where you don't lose muscle that quickly by any means. I think it's something like legitimately you don't actually lose real contractile tissue unless you've been doing absolutely nothing for like 2 weeks. So like no
Yeah.
lifting at all for that long. But even
Yeah.
so, like I found that the body feels different even after 2 or 3 days of no lifting, whether that's like fluid retention, like your muscles aren't as full of glycogen or like you're retaining more extracellular water, like the space between your muscles and your skin. Like it's something just feels different, right? And it's almost a mind game. It's like I know I'm not losing muscle and I don't think I'm gaining body fat because
Yeah.
for me usually I'm like and I
Mhm.
suspect you're the same way. It's like I don't go overboard when I'm not training on the food. Usually I'm like taking extra care that I don't go overboard because I'm not training. But even so the body feels a little bit different. And then it's a little bit of a mind game like, hey, I know that I'm not actually losing any muscle here. The body feels different, but it's, it's like water retention, something related to that. And then, like you noted, get back to training, whenever you take the several days off or the full week. And then all of a sudden, training's really good. So it's almost like you just have to, for me, I find that like I just have to get through that feeling. I have to like kind of convince myself, like, hey, the body feels kind of weird. Like I almost feel fatter. I'm not actually fatter, but that's the feeling. I feel fatter and I have to talk myself like, "Hey, like, no, nothing bad's happening. Get back to training." Then you feel back to normal after one training session, basically.
Yeah. Yeah,
Do you
that's
kind of
just
have
like
that?
the yeah, yeah, it's I think it's just like par for the course if you love this stuff. I think it's probably 100% mental. Like I don't like maybe like if you don't adjust your diet, then you'll be eating way more carbs than you're burning because you're not training. So you will have that fluid retention, like you said. That makes a lot of sense. But other than that, I can't see any negatives from taking time off the gym if you've been at it hard for a long time. Like it's all mental. It's just some sort of weird withdrawal where you're maybe not getting the dopamine from the workout, the endorphins, all that stuff, which I think you should probably chase in a different way if you are taking time off from the gym, by doing anything that you enjoy, whether it's music, video games, art, just whatever your other thing is that you like. I think it's a good transition period for that until you get back to your regular routine of lifting. But yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, actually. It's like when you regularly have this thing that you're doing that you really love, and then all of a sudden you take time off for recovery or vacation
Yeah.
or what have you, or both.
Yeah.
And it's like you kind of it would seem to be beneficial to fill that void with something else that you'd like a hobby or something else to keep your brain busy or something. So when you're leading into your vacation, were you feeling like you were overtrained at all or like you were ready for a break? Like physically you're like, yeah, I'm tired, I could use this, or like did you have any nagging pains that maybe you're like, yeah, I'm glad I'm gonna take a little bit of time off going into the vacation?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So whenever I know I have something like this coming where I'm kind of either going to be away from my normal gym or just circumstances are going to be so that I can't train as hard or at all, or even planned as such, um, I purposefully overtrain, like, I'd say anywhere from 4 to 8 days before that period of time off. I'll train, maybe closer to failure, a bit more weight, a little bit more sets, more volume, whatever you wanna call it. I make it purposefully difficult because if you're gonna be going into a period of no training, you could basically burn yourself to the ground, and as long as you have that rest period coming, you will recover, as long as you don't injure actual, like, tissue, then you'll recover. So it's a really good period of time to kind of even test your limit, if you will, like safely, of course, but just train really, really hard so that when you do come back to the gym, maybe you'll realize, hey, I should have been using more weight, or maybe I can actually tolerate volume better because I'm not even that sore after that crazy workout, like things like that. It's a good time to just experiment a little bit because there's no harm done if you don't get injured.
Right. So it's almost like hey, I'm gonna really try to push my limits now, knowing that like I'm gonna have time to recover. So then you can learn a lot from it. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that my limits extended as far as they do. So then, maybe that
Yeah,
helps you when you get back. Totally.
yeah,
Cool. Well, I am curious about, so you mentioned that the past 2 years or so since you last stepped off stage. And again, that was the last time that you and I were both at the same competition. You've been, for the majority of the time, in a little bit of a surplus. So it's like
yeah,
kind of like an extended conservative lean bulk.
yeah,
Couple of relatively short mini cuts, assertive deficits. So I'm curious, over the course of these past few years, what has your kind of recovery structured look like? And I guess we can break this down into several pillars. So I guess like it would be reasonable to break recovery into like sleep, diet, maybe like stress management. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit. Maybe we can talk about like supplements if that's something that um that's part of your routine. I'm curious about all of it. So I
yeah.
guess to start off, like what is your kind of dietary approach? We know that you've been in overall a slight surplus, but what about everything from like how many meals you're eating per day and like what goes through your process of picking out foods or meal prepping, or what is that like for you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you mentioned a few pillars that I think we should get into. I have a list of things that I think affect recovery. So if you want me to kind of go quickly into them later on, just let me know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
But as far as diet, you might not like this answer, but it's so flexible, man. You have no idea. Like I kind of just do whatever I want all the time within certain rules that I make for myself. So calories, I don't track. I don't have to because my foods are 90 to 95% consistent day to day because of my day job. It's just kind of I make my lunch, it looks the way it looks. My suppers are pretty much always the same with maybe small variety, but they're really close in terms of macros and calories, which again is not tracked. It's all just intuitive. And I think that's a skill that we should all try to learn, whether you're into bodybuilding or not. I think it should be taught in school. I think it's just something that's just important for general well-being, happiness, longevity, health, all that. So yeah, I don't track my food unless I'm prepping. I just have a really in tune way of kind of knowing what's in my food. I weigh myself once a week at least just to kind of know if I am trending up. But most of the time, I don't need the scale. I just need a mirror to kind of know if I am trending up a little bit. Yeah, so I eat pretty bland compared to probably most people. It makes it a lot easier to not overeat because I believe that if you make your food taste a little bit too good, obviously it's going to be harder to not overeat. So most of my days are like breakfast before work, um, I program 2 meals at work, so around 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because I train around 3:30 in the afternoon.
Mhm.
So about an hour and a half before, and then I have like a quick carb, like a banana or something, half an hour before my workout. And then when I get home, depending on how busy my evening is, I try to get a supper in within an hour to an hour and a half of my training. I usually just wait until my appetite kicks up, which is sometimes a little bit longer than might be ideal in that like 5 hour window between pre-workout and post. Sometimes I'm extending it slightly past that, but if I'm not hungry, I don't really like force feeding just because there's this window that you're kind of supposed to try to get your carbs and your protein in. Um, and then I kind of just snack the rest of the evening after that on whatever I decide I need based on um, how hard I've been training, how busy I've been at work on my feet, stuff like that. But I always try to end my food intake 2 hours before bed so that I don't impact my sleep too much with the thermic effect of digestion and stuff like that.
Something I'm interested in is, so you've got this kind of intuitive approach. What what do you measure that intuition by? Like, are you are you measuring you mentioned a couple things like that last point about in the evening you might snack to accommodate the activity levels of earlier in the day if you were on your feet a lot or if you trained how to maybe you had a crazy leg session or something like that. So like you're kind of using that as some kind of a way of measuring how much more to eat later in the day. But are you also intuitively measuring, like, using your hunger levels? Is that would you say, like, a main kind of, uh, I suppose yeah, I guess metric would be the best way to label it. Are you going mostly by hunger?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. If I find myself feeling like physically weak, like low blood sugar weak, that does happen to me sometimes after like a really hard leg day or something, where I'll like my hands will almost start to shake a little bit because it's like I really need to refuel. So I get moments like that where I just know my body's telling me to eat. I have a fairly low appetite, generally speaking, at least in terms of being able to stomach a lot of food at once. So I find that if I choose the right foods that are fairly either calorie light or calorie dense, depending on if I'm trying to bulk or not bulk as quickly, then it's kind of very difficult for me to gain fat too quickly. And I think that would be the case for most people if they're choosing the right foods for themselves. So if you're eating something that you really really like that is calorie dense, well, that's a recipe for disaster. You're probably going to gain weight. So if you can try to figure out over the years what foods you like that you know are good for you, like calorie wise, not too high, not too low, depending on your goal at the time, then you can kind of skew your way up or down on the scale depending on what phase you're in your transition.
Right. Yeah, those are really, really good points. And something else that you mentioned too is that you mentioned that, like, your meals maybe to an outsider's perspective might come across as being like kind of bland.
Oh
But
yeah.
that seems to go hand in hand with what you just mentioned about low calorie dense foods versus filling up on high calorie dense foods. It's like oftentimes the lower calorie dense foods do tend to look more bland, like lots of veg and like unprocessed whole foods tend to, not be as hyper palatable, super, super tasty.
Hmm.
Um, so that all kind of makes sense, and I think that that's something that if there's someone listening that is listening to your approach and is like, "Man, I wish that I could, like, not really track my meals and still get super jacked and not gain a ton of body fat and be lean year round." It's like that I think that is actually one of the most helpful points is, well, if you structure your meals using mostly whole unprocessed foods, lower calorie dense foods, you fill up on them, you don't overeat them. They taste good, but not like hyper palatable like chips and junk. There's gonna be a low probability that you're gonna overeat calories, and you'll probably get a lot of nutrients in the process, and it'll actually be hard to gain excess
Yeah.
body fat through the
Yeah.
process. Right. That makes a lot of sense. So, okay. Do you do you find that okay, this is an interesting question. This kind of intuitive approach, have you always done that? Or did you find that you needed or it was beneficial for you to at some point learn how to track calories more concretely? Like for the past preps that you did, like maybe you tracked calories during those preps. And in doing so, maybe that gave you some extra knowledge about the caloric density of different foods that you're eating. Do you feel like, well, I'd love to know your kind of history and your background with that. Like, was there a time where you really dove into tracking calories? And do you feel like that's something that is helpful for doing something like eating intuitively?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have a hard time realizing the calorie content of their foods. So if you can buy a food scale and do the math and look at labels and kind of just educate yourself that way, I think that's a very valuable tool. One that I started using specifically for my first prep, because obviously when you're prepping for a bodybuilding show, like you can't afford 5 calories extra in a meal. At least you should try not to. So everything is really, really tightly micromanaged down to the calorie if possible. So that's a good tool to learn, but I only started competing after I think, or thinking of competing after about 8 years of already bodybuilding. So up until that point, my only real tool was my intuition in kind of just eating pretty monotonously every day. So if I needed to lose or gain weight, it was a singular variable that I had to change, like making my supper bigger or having an extra snack. Like it wasn't difficult for me to trend in the direction I wanted to. I actually suffered from like not eating enough for the vast majority of the first probably 3 or 4 years of training. I was chasing too much the look of being lean as well as trying to gain muscle, which unfortunately does not go hand in hand, at least not past the noob gain period. I was always very small, so for me, my efforts are towards gaining weight more so than losing weight always. To some extent, have to kind of force myself to eat more than I'm comfortable just to maintain my current body weight, which is only like probably 14-15% body fat, like at the top end of a bulk for me. But even that, like if I was to just eat intuitively, like to my hunger level, and I didn't care about bodybuilding goals, I'd probably trend towards 10 or 11% body fat and just stay there all the time. So,
Right.
yeah.
So what do you I know that you mentioned, like, over the past couple of years that you have done at least a couple of, like, fairly aggressive mini cuts to trim
Mhm.
off whatever body fat you feel is needed so you can get back to the kind of lean bulking approach that you have. At what stage, like, at what point do you get to where you're like, "Okay, I think it's time that we trim down a little bit." Is it kind of just like you're looking in the mirror and it's like, "Yeah, I could, I'm a little soft right now, I could tighten up a little bit," or are you like do you have, like, a hard limit on the scale? It's like, "If I get up to X amount of weight, then I know it's time to kinda go back down a little bit," or what's your approach with that?
It's pretty intuitive again. So it's not a hard rule by any means because my, let's say, 190 pounds, which would be like pretty bulked for me currently. I'm a happy like 180, 183, where I feel my best. So if I was to get to 190 this time, I've been there before, it would also be a different 190 than last time, probably more muscle mass because that was 3 years ago. So I mostly do it based on intuition. So if I know for some reason that I'm going to have an extended period of time where my training will suffer, either because of a vacation or something like that, I might tie that into a mini cut period to take advantage of the fact that I'm not going to be able to stimulate growth and build more muscle tissue anyways. I've had an unfortunate medical condition this year, which was my 6 week mini cut this time. I knew I wasn't going to put on any muscle because I couldn't even lift a weight.
I wanted to quickly interrupt this episode to let you know about the work that I do. I work full time as an online physique coach, helping my clients to accomplish their muscle growth and fat loss goals by optimizing their approach to strength training and nutrition. I've been doing this work since 2018 and love helping my clients to transform their bodies and ultimately their lives. If you've been considering getting some help with accomplishing your own physique goals, you're invited to hit the link in the description below to learn a little bit more about the work that I do and how I can help you. You can even use that link to schedule a free video consultation with me. If you have any questions about my coaching or how I can help you, just email me at sam@jadeathletics.ca. All right, let's get back to the episode.
So I took advantage of that time to do a fairly aggressive mini cut, lost about 10 pounds in that 6 weeks, which is not super aggressive, but it's aggressive considering I couldn't train very much to try to stimulate maintaining the muscle mass that I do have. Um, it's mostly based on if I have a hard time eating to continue to gain, and I have to resort to things like foods that are less healthy just for the sake of gaining more weight. If I'm transitioning towards like junk foods, if you will, just to keep bulking. Well, that doesn't seem like a very good place to be when my goal is just as much health as it is fitness, right? It's health and fitness for a reason. The health comes first, in my opinion, at least. Um, so that, but also like pure like ego or self-esteem, if whatever you want to call it. If I look in the mirror and I'm not happy with what I see, I will change that. That's the whole reason most of us started doing this thing, right? So there's nothing wrong with looking in the mirror and just giving yourself good constructive feedback and saying, "Hey, I think I'm ready. I think I should lose 15 pounds so that I can be in a better place, feel more confident, train harder, all that stuff."
Yeah, that's really helpful. I think that's really helpful for a lot of people here too, for a lot of people to hear too, because I think there's this kind of there can be a misconception that in order to make consistent progress, muscle growth progress, whilst kind of staying lean year round and like taking this kind of approach of improving your physique, it needs to be ultra regimented. And it can be, like it definitely can be. But I think it's helpful to know that there can be more of this kind of a flexible or intuitive approach. But the prerequisites of being able to do that is having, like, from the way that you described, like, having a lot of body awareness and also, like, some basic understanding of nutrition and, like, what are lower calorie dense foods, what are higher calorie dense foods, and being able to strategically understand that making your meals a little bit more quote unquote bland. I'm the same as you, by the way. Like, I love bland meals. Like, my meals are like grilled veg and tuna bowls. Like, it's like the most bland thing with like chili powder, and that's it. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
But for an outsider looking in, they're like, man, just no. But ha- having that kind of an understanding, I think, allows for a much more flexible and intuitive approach. So I think that's really helpful to hear. Do you measure your progress? Like, are you is there any kind of a metric that you use to, like, track how much muscle you're building, or is it mostly through your performance in the gym? It's like, yeah, my lifts are going up, or um, I'm noticing I look better at certain body weights in the mirror. Like, what's your approach as far as that goes?
Yeah, it's basically all of that. Minus like I don't measure anymore. Like in my first probably 5 years of training, I used to measure my biceps, my quads, my chest measurement, my calf, and I probably did that every 3 months. I feel like if you do it too often, you're just gonna disappoint yourself because we're natural bodybuilders. It's really, really slow. Um, but yeah, no, I don't measure like physical things except for maybe body weight, if you want to call it that. But I know that when I do a bulk and or sorry a cut and get back to a bulked weight, that same weight always looks different than it did last time. It's a more muscular, leaner version of that weight, and my new top end weight of the end of a bulk is continually going up, which is obviously a sign of successful bulking because you're actually putting on muscle mass and ending up at a heavier weight at the end of each bulk. And then when I cut, I also look leaner at a higher body weight. So it's just by design, you're tracking, if you will, just not in a tangible like measurement kind of way.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you I know that you're not tracking things specifically, but do you pay attention to things like protein, carb, fat ratios at all? Or do you just like ballparking, like, I'm pretty sure I'm getting enough protein here. And it's like, yeah, if I'm getting some carbohydrates around my training, I know you mentioned like you have that pre-workout banana, for example. Like, are you kind of paying attention to those things, or it's mostly like, I'm getting mostly whole foods. I'm pretty sure I'm getting enough protein, so I think I'm good to go, regardless of where my carbs and fats are sitting. Where are you at
Yeah.
there?
It's kind of in the middle. I do technically track my protein. Um, I don't actually. I wouldn't be able to tell you what my current like protein daily intake is, but it's probably around anywhere, depending on the day, anywhere from 150 to 200 grams a day, which even on the low end is likely plenty in a bulk, even to stimulate more growth. So um, yeah, I don't. necessarily track to the gram because I don't feel the need to when I'm bulking. And I feel that the added stresses of like getting those numbers in is not really conducive to the goal when it causes actual stress, which is one of the worst things for recovery. So, um, yeah, so I do like I make wraps for my lunches. It's just something that's quick and easy. I don't have access to a microwave or anything like that, so it has to be something that's decent when it's cold. So I do measure my chicken when I make my wraps. It's one of the very few things that I use my food scale for. It's probably actually basically the only thing that I use my food scale for is to measure my to make sure I get my protein intake and I dose that protein synthesis response throughout the day as much as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
What about supplementation? Is that something that you've like, are you trying to get in a protein shake in the mix, or like, do you have pre-workout before your workouts? Do you have some like kind of sleep aid before bedtime? What's your supplement regimen like if you have one?
Yeah. I find supplements to be by far like the least important thing, but it doesn't mean it's not important. It's just there's so many other things that you need to get in a row before supplements even matter. Um, so that being said, I do take some supplements. Creatine is an easy one, whether you're a bodybuilder or just a normal person. I think it's a good idea to take your 5 grams a day. Not only is it good for the body, but it's good for the mind. There's a lot of studies that have shown how good it is cognitively just to keep you fresh and aware. There's some recent stuff that has shown that like if you're severely sleep deprived from one bad night, you can take like 20 grams of creatine and it basically completely undoes the effects of a singular bad night of sleep. It won't do much for you chronically, but it's something that'll help in the short term. So creatine is one. Protein powder is something that I always have on hand. I take anywhere from 1 to 3 servings a day, depending on the day. Sometimes it's pure laziness just to get my protein in, and I don't either make the time or have the time to make a proper meal. So I just get my protein in because it's, in my opinion, the most important of the macros when it comes to building muscle. Um, Before bed, I have been taking magnesium as of recent. I'd say within the last year. I haven't noticed much of a difference in my sleep because I've always had pretty good sleep quality. But I do think that for the cost of it, which isn't that crazy expensive, it's probably helping because my training has been good, not necessarily better than before, but at the very least, I feel like it's probably effective. Um, Beyond that, I went through a phase of taking a lot more supplements. Like I've been bodybuilding for 17 years, so I kind of tried a lot of different things. Um, but what I continually find myself falling back to is less and less and less. So I went through a phase where I was doing beta alanine, citrulline malate as a pre-workout, and maybe it helped, but if it helped, it was so insignificant that it only hurt my wallet. What's the point? So I stopped taking those things. The only pre-workout that I take is caffeine, by far the most active one in your body that actually helps. So I take a 200 milligram caffeine pill about a half hour, 45 minutes before my workout. That gives me just a little boost in the afternoon. Um, which you want to be careful about because it will impact your sleep if you do take it a little bit too late in the day. So my personal cutoff is 2 o'clock in the afternoon for caffeine because I go to bed at 10 o'clock at night. It takes around 8 hours for the caffeine to leave your body. So ideally, you would have it completely out of your system before bed so you can start getting tired the way you're supposed to.
Yeah, you and I have a pretty similar outlook on supplementation. Like I'm
Yeah.
similar. Like I've been lifting for honestly like or almost 20 years if it hasn't been 20 years yet. Pretty
Yeah.
close. So I've gone through lots of my own kind of supplementation phases, and something that I found too is, I could add in a certain kind of pre-workout, or I can take it out, or I can add magnesium, or I can take it out, and it's very difficult to know if there's any difference. So, like
Yeah.
even like the magnesium thing, like I would have take a couple capsules of that um for months at a time, and then I ran out and I stopped, and I noticed that nothing seemed to be any different, right? So it's tough to know if, like, if I started to take it again and then all of a sudden, oh, everything feels better. Is it? And then I would start to question, like, is that because the magnesium is actually helping, or is it a placebo? Like, is it just because I think it's doing something? I'm feeling a physical manifestation or psychological manifestation of that. Um, but yeah, and I like protein powder because it tastes good. My favorite implementation of protein powder is to like have it as something that's sweet. So I don't eat, like, I have chocolate protein powder instead of like chocolate cake. So that helps me like stay leaner at the end of the day. So
Yeah, yeah.
um yeah, interesting. Okay, something that you touched on, I think we were actually still kind of talking about like more meals, food, nutrition stuff. You brought up like stressing about like hitting macronutrient targets, or like stressing about hitting protein. I can't remember what it was, but you mentioned stress in particular, and that it's probably not a good thing when we're talking about recovery. So, question for you is, do you find like your personality, like, are you kind of like, have you struggled in the past with like being stressed in general? Like, are you kind of by default an anxious person, or do you get stressed easily? And if so, how do you manage stress? Is it an ongoing struggle for you? And how do you feel it impacts things like recovery and your muscle growth progress?
Yeah, I wouldn't consider myself an anxious or stressful person, but there are definitely certain things that I feel trigger that in me relatively quicker than probably your average person. Ironically, it's probably things that mess up with my like bodybuilding habits. So things that may delay my workout time, may delay my meals. Um, yeah, basically my routine that I've spent all these years trying to build up to, that I believe gives me the best ability to succeed and continue to progress. When things come in the way of that, I selfishly like feel anxious or stressed, which is very counterintuitive and not exactly fair to the people around me at times either, because I have my own routine, which is fine, but there's also regular life that needs to be taken into account, which is nothing that can be planned perfectly and meticulously, like as much as we try to with this bodybuilding thing. So, yeah, I think it's just about accepting everything that gets thrown at you in life, trying your best with your goals, and just adapting, which gets easier and easier over time. In general, I think that I am doing much better than I was a few years ago, and that I'm continually growing and improving on that. Um, if you are finding yourself wanting to be very meticulous, but the people around you aren't necessarily agreeing with your decisions, or making it easier for you to like have the foods you want, stuff like that, there's one of two things: it might not be the right support system for you. Maybe these people don't really fully understand like what you're trying to do, and the fact that you're trying to be healthier, build muscle, and do the whole lifestyle thing. Or maybe you're taking it a little bit too seriously at times where it doesn't need to be. Um, Prep is a bit of a monster of its own, where you kind of have to forego regular life for the sake of a really ambitious goal. But other than that, there needs to be a little bit of flexibility in your day to day life, just to accommodate the fact that you're a human being first and a bodybuilder, not even second, probably 10th, if not 20th, down the list of things that you are as a person, you know?
Right. Those are really good insights. Honestly, that's probably the crux of my stress as well, is if I'm ever in a situation where I have to step away from my regular structure as well, or my regular routine. That's what that's what gets me going.
Yeah.
Which it's
Yeah.
ironic, right? Because I think you're kind of alluding to this, but a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people don't find that kind of structure appealing.
Right.
So it's almost ironic. It's like we love that structure so much, or we feel so comfortable with it, that when we're forced to be flexible, or maybe it's beneficial for us to be flexible, that's what kind of gets us actually out of our comfort zone and can lead to stress. It's tough. Like, Do you find it tough to find that balance? Like, you know, it's like being able to judge, like, okay, is it, you know, the my support system maybe isn't right for me versus maybe I genuinely need to be more flexible. Do you find it's have you ever struggled finding the balance with that? Or is that something that you've kind of intuitively been able to pick up on easily?
I've been very fortunate. I'm not sure that everybody gets a really good support system in life, or at least it may take a long time to build up those relationships. But from basically like my high school years up until now, I've had the same friends, the same support system. My family has kind of always understood my goals, so they've made it as easy as possible um, to just follow my goals and not make me feel bad about it. Like they'll pressure me in the sense of like extending the things that are just basic courtesies, like going to a family gathering. Would you like a drink of alcohol? Would you like some cake? Would you, you know, all the normal life things. But I've never felt guilty, bad, or like I didn't fit in for saying no to anything. And my wife is also a bodybuilder, so my home life couldn't be easier because she does the same things that I do. So yeah, I've just been very fortunate, but I understand that a lot of people might live in a way that's very different than me. They might still be at home with their parents. Their meals might be highly dictated by the people that are going to do the groceries, which may not be them, which is perfectly fine. But I think that an intellectual, like honest conversation amongst people in a household or in an environment will make it much easier for everyone involved to not only support each other in their goals, but potentially even spill over into influencing those people to make better decisions about their habits. I think that's kind of the point. It's not just for me to be healthy. I want to influence other people without being pushy, to also want to be better for themselves. Just for health first.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
if they see someone like you that's being particular about their eating choices at social events or gatherings, and they look at you and they're like, "Wow, he's, pretty jacked. Maybe I should consider,
Yeah.
picking up on what he's doing." I mean, that is I mean, it's a good way of you're being an example. You're being a good example for other people to pick up on.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Um, something that we haven't talked about yet is sleep. But before we do that, I know that you mentioned, like, you had several things that you'd been thinking about as far as recovery goes. Like, have we touched on some of those topics, or is there anything that we might have missed that you think is worth bringing up?
Yeah, yeah. So we touch base on most of them. If you want, I can go through it. But guess what's at the top of my list?
It wouldn't be sleep, is it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I think sleep, like by far, is king. Like if sleep is impacted, it doesn't matter how well you're training because eventually that will suffer because of your sleep. You're never gonna recover from your workout, no matter how good that one workout was. It's about the cumulative effect of good sleep for years and years and years, whatever that means for you. So I have a ritual, if you will, before sleep. I have an environment for sleep. Like everything is revolved around sleep. And I've been fortunate that I've had the same sleep schedule since high school. I've never had to work night shifts or anything very disruptive like that. So, except for like random weekends where I go out or have friends over and just kind of don't follow my sleep schedule, which is fairly rare, it's very concise all the time because I think your mood, your training, just everything is sleep. When you get a poor night's sleep, you also screw up your hormones, so you end up eating worse. And when you eat worse, you train worse, and it's just this compounding effect of negative outcomes for somebody that's trying to get positive outcomes. So I like to keep my room dark for one. No electronics a couple hours before bed. If you do for some reason use some have a night shift mode or whatever it's called on your phone and stuff so that you're not getting that blue light in your retina right before bed indicating for your body to stay awake. Keeping noise to a minimal, keeping temperature down near bedtime physically feeling a little bit cold is a good thing. It allows your body to release more melatonin because it signals the fact that the sun is gone, it's not as hot out, and it's ready for sleep, for bed. Keeping caffeine ideally like 10 to 12 hours before bedtime. I personally follow an 8-hour rule, but ideally I would stop taking my caffeine around noon. I just find that it has not impacted my recovery. And yeah, other than that, for sleep, it's just about keeping a good, quiet, no artificial light environment in your room, no noises, unless it's like a background noise that you like for sleep. And trying to get to sleep at the exact same time every night and waking up at the same time every morning. And I mean down to the minute. No snooze button, no, nothing like that. Like when that alarm clock hits, you're on your feet immediately, and eventually your body will become accustomed to that, program that, and it'll just be so much easier for you.
I've never understood the snooze button because you think
Yeah.
about it,
Yes.
you hit snooze, and then I can't remember what the time intervals are, but it's not that long.
Seven
It's like
minutes.
7
Seven
minutes. So, like,
minutes.
you
Yeah.
just fall asleep again, and then it wakes you up again. It's like this ongoing
Yeah.
torture, right? That's what it is. You're just, like, torturing yourself. So, I haven't used the snooze button since I was, like, in college, so long time
Yeah.
ago.
You're training laziness, literally training it on purpose.
And that too, and
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah.
Um Yeah, it's funny. I always can tell when like my sleep is like really on point when I've kind of got my own nighttime routine, and a lot of it is in alignment with what you just mentioned. And I think a big part of it for me is like keeping all of the hyper stimulative things like out 2 hours before bedtime. So like even if I'm watching a show on TV, it's like all the lights are all like my lights are always like down on low no matter what I'm doing in the evening, but lights down low. But if I'm comfortable and the temperature's good and I'm watching something on Netflix or whatever, and it's like a thriller or a horror or something like that, it's like I'm like really or just a show I really am interested and invested in,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
that almost
Yeah.
always does bad things for my sleep if my noggin's kinda going on overdrive thinking about too much stuff.
Yeah.
But I usually find actually this one of the best metrics that I have for myself to tell if my sleep's on point or not is I usually fall asleep on the couch before I even make it to the bed. Like sometime between 10 and 10:30. That's usually when I'm in bed. Um, but usually I'm like I fall asleep like shortly after 10 on the couch and have to drag myself to my room to go to sleep. But um what's interesting too is like the importance of sleep. I'm on board with that 100%. It's true both when you're like dieting, so like in a prep, for example, and in a lean bulk. It's not just like one or the other, but something that I find in particular, like when I'm prepping. So I'm actually right now, I'm just finishing up my pre-prep diet. I've been like
Yeah, I
in
saw that. Yeah. Yeah.
18th week of dieting. It's actually starting to like kind of suck. Like I've got a long ways to go. I'm like, I'm glad it's just a pre-prep diet, but geez Louise.
Yeah.
But something that I've found, and I'm being reminded of this now, is in past preps, it always gets when the prep becomes really hard is always when sleep starts to like get bad. Like
Yeah.
all of a sudden my 7.5 to 8 hours creeps down to below 7 hours, and then it's like 5 to 6, and then like I'm waking up at 2 in the morning, can't fall back asleep, and then that's when it really starts sucking and it becomes apparent. Did you find that like when you did your past preps, like did you ever get to a point where your sleep was taking a hit?
Yeah. I think it's probably like impossible to prevent. I think it's just a hormonal factor of being so hungry, your body starts prioritizing food over sleep. Like I'm not even that food focused during prep, surprisingly. Like I'm focused on when my next meal is, but I'm not focused on food itself, if that makes sense. So if I know that I don't have a meal in the future, like my last meal before bed, let's say I know I won't eat for another 12 hours, then it doesn't bother me too much. But I know a lot of people like they're just thinking about food nonstop all the time, specific meals, specific things they like. So I think that cuts into your sleep too. But I think even that aside, there's something about prep itself that I don't know if there's any literature on this, but I speculate that like if your body was spending too much time sleeping, while you're so food deprived, that's less opportunities for you to either hunt or gather your own food. So I think there comes a certain point where the hormones start to skew towards, we don't need to sleep right now, we need to eat and figure that out. So I think it's impossible for you to just make that sleep up by trying harder. That's just not how it works. It's
The
mostly
creatine won't
hormonal.
cut it.
No, and some naps if you can fit them in, but you're just gonna, at the end of prep, man, it's just such a different animal. You're gonna suffer. Life is gonna suck for a while. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. There's no
Yeah.
way to avoid it.
No, not
It's
really.
very true. Yeah. I'm grateful I'm doing my prep a little bit different this time where I've got it's planned out well enough in advance that I'm breaking it up. I'm doing like a pre-prep diet. I get a 5-week maintenance block, which is nice because I can feel it. Like I still got a long ways to go, but I can feel the effects of the diet kind of already. So it's nice that there's going to be like a bit of a 5-week recharge. I can, you know, get the batteries back up to full and then get into the hard part for the end of this year into next year. So,
I don't want to go
um,
off track or anything, but are you doing your own prep this time?
no. So
Okay,
I've got Jeff helping me again. So
gotcha, gotcha.
thankfully it's all really well mapped out.
Nice,
So,
nice.
so hopefully sleep is as it's affected as little as it possibly can be. But, you know, it's like you noted, eventually it's kind of unavoidable, at least for
Yeah,
most people.
yeah, yeah.
Um, well, I'm curious about because I know that you last got off stage 2 years ago, and I know when we chatted last, like, there hasn't been any shows, at least, like, on your radar, like, you weren't sure, like, if or when you're going to compete again. Are you kind of, like, same context right now? It's like, you just are focusing on the kind of intuitive bulking process, making progress, and, like, living the lifestyle? Or where are you as far as that goes?
Yeah, so because I've been training for so long, I find that like the year to year or even the 2 year over 2 year period is a very small change in how I actually look. My competitive goals aren't necessarily competitive in the way that when I started competing, I really did want to win. And obviously, that's still true to put myself through that much effort. But I mostly just really want to make a drastic difference between the previous version of myself and the current version of myself. So I feel that if I competed, let's say next year, even, it would be close enough visually to how I was last time that it wouldn't feel worthwhile for me to put in all that effort. It's such a hard struggle for myself and the people around me to put up with somebody through prep that I don't find it worthwhile unless I'm going to have a significant change in appearance where I'm very proud of the difference in physique, if that makes sense.
It makes
So
total sense. Yeah.
yeah, like I went 5 years between my previous two shows, and that was um let's see, that was 10 years of bodybuilding training versus 15. So from 10 to 15, I managed to make pretty good progress. But the more progress you make, the harder it is to squeeze out a little bit more. So another 2 years it's been now since year 15. Now I'm in year 17. So I just don't think that the difference is tangible enough that I would feel proud of myself individually. So I just want to
Mm.
wait long enough that I feel like, wow, I've made so much progress. I think I'm a better athlete. And then maybe the drive will come back to want to do it again.
That makes perfect sense. You know, it's funny because I remember our last conversation and you shared your story about your last couple preps and also about like the difficulty of the last prep itself. And I've had other conversations since then too with um, stories that had similar themes, like the preps being incredibly difficult. Like there's a very clear dark side of prep. It's very uncomfortable, and you end up going on stage and you get judged, and you know you might not do nearly as well as had been aiming for, as you'd planned for. And but anyways, these conversations have been having a pretty big impact on me and have been kind of changing my own perspective on like what I want to get out of the prep I'm doing right now and the season that I'm about to get myself into, because I'm thinking similarly to you. It's like, well, I got off stage 2 years ago, and I've been since then the majority of the time before starting this pre-prep diet, I've been in a lean bulk, and I've been doing the best I can to like focus on the areas that would have been my weaker spots to
Mhm.
build as much as possible. But even so, it's like we're natural bodybuilders. 2 years, if I built a pound of muscle each year, which that might be even generous. It's like, well, I've
Yeah.
built maybe a couple pounds of muscle, and it's like, is it going to be that noticeable on stage? Probably not. It will be to
Right.
me if I like get like if I hyper focus on things, but like most people won't pick up on the changes probably. So I'm thinking like, okay, so why am I doing this? Like for real? Like honestly, I'm like, I've asked myself that question many times over the past little while. Like, why am I doing this? Because I'm already feeling the effects of the pre-prep diet. Like, man, this kind of sucks. So why am I doing this? Because like I'm gonna improve a little bit, and I didn't come first in my last season. Like I did 4 shows, I didn't win any of them. I wanted to win. Like it's like we
Right.
don't do it to come second place. So it's
Right.
like, well, if I'm going by that logic, and I'm just a slightly better physique, which probably is the case, it's like, well, I don't know how much different it's going to be. So I'm doing it to win, but why else am I doing it? Like I need to have more reasons than that just um to go through this entire very long process and all the discomfort that comes from doing it. So it's been interesting for me. I've been kind of brainstorming and try to really understand what my goals, my reasons are for doing this outside of just wanting to win. And I think like what I've concluded are like my areas of focus now is like to find things that I like that are fun about it. So that's a priority. Like I want to have fun throughout the process, which is tough because it's like a really hard process. And I want to um I want to learn from it. Like, we do these preps and maybe not in the moment it might feel like, wow, everything just kind of sucks and like I don't know what I'm learning right now, but it's like after the fact, it's like you look back and retrospectively it's like, yeah, I actually like I learned some stuff about my about myself. So like maybe some of that's a goal of mine. um and just to reach my potential again, like if I can get just a little bit better, then that'll be a goal. But that's kind of what I'm settling on, is to like have fun, reach my next potential, and like learn throughout the process, and to find other ways of making it meaningful outside of just winning. But it's interesting because like the last conversation that you and I had, like I really thought about that, and other conversations I've had too. It's like, we go through this really tough thing, and then, the outcome is not in our control, like as far as placings go, right?
Right.
And then we've only got so much space to improve with X number of years that we're training hard. So I really get that. Are
Yeah.
you would you say that like not having the kind of pressure on your shoulders to like get on stage by a certain date, like, hey, I'm planning for next year, it's next 2026, 2027, that's what I'm getting on. Do you find that like the process is more enjoyable? It's like, hey, I'm just going to build as much muscle as I can, and I'll get on stage when I'm ready. If I decide I do, maybe I don't want to get on stage. Do you find like, are you having a good time?
Yeah, I'm loving every minute of it. Yeah, I couldn't find it any more enjoyable, whether or not I have a goal of a show in the future. Like, I train my ass off no matter what. I just love it. If it's not hard, it's not fun for me, which is actually a problem when it comes to recovery, because I need to be
Mhm.
very careful of not training too hard. Because if I had it my way, I would just train balls to the walls every single time and miraculously recover and do it all over again the next day endlessly until I die. But that's not how it works. So you have to taper everything back just enough to still enjoy it, squeeze out some progress, and just get better slowly year over year. So yeah, no, the joy of competing versus not, for me, like the training doesn't change at all. Um, I still try just as hard, even though I don't have a concrete goal. I still really want to spend as much time as I can getting better, as efficiently as I can too. So I'm not wasting time or spinning my wheels and staying in the same place year over year, which happens a lot, especially as you progress. You need to get so much more intelligent just to get a little bit more progress. So, yeah.
It's true. Do you I was gonna ask this earlier and I forgot, but do you try to manage things like DOMs? Like, do you find that you get sore from your training sessions? And if you do, is that like something that you kind of track? Like, okay, that means that I need to be a little bit more chill for the next one, or I need to maybe that's an opportunity. Like, hey, maybe I need to be a little bit add a little bit more food intuitively in the evening, or something like that. Do you keep an eye on that?
Yeah, I believe that soreness is completely fine, but too much soreness is an indicator that you're not recovering, especially if it's time for you to hit that same muscle group again. Um, as you know, like soreness is just muscle damage. It just means you physically damage your fibers, which means they have to recover. And during the process of that recovery, they're actually not growing. They're just recovering first that damage. So if you're always really sore, you're probably not spending much time actually growing. So some soreness is okay, but too much is probably pretty bad. So if I find myself getting too sore, which is pretty rare nowadays, unless I switch to a different exercise I haven't done in a long time or something. But I figured out my personal recoverable amount of volume that I can handle, not only like systemically for my entire body, but also per muscle group. So I know exactly how many sets per week I want to do of biceps versus quads versus glutes versus any other muscle in my body, which happens over the course of years of just learning that about yourself. So if I stay within the constraints of those things, I usually don't get overly sore, but does still happen sometimes. Sometimes I have to taper an exercise back in terms of proximity to failure, load. Usually not like sets. I usually keep sets fairly consistent because it's the metric that I like to keep stable. Just personally, I enjoy keeping sets fairly stable. Um, so yeah, I will sometimes taper exercises back, intensity back if I have to. But most of the time, if it's a one-off situation where I get really sore, even if I'm still sore into that next workout of the same muscle group, I'll usually ignore it altogether. But if I feel it compounding after about a week, then I'll make the changes necessary either that week or just the next training block altogether,
Right.
depending.
Do you find that you have to make any adjustments more so like when you do your occasional mini cuts with lower calories? Do you find that you get more sore? Or is it kind of similar?
I find it to be identical for the most part. Yeah, like I usually take those mini cuts fairly aggressively, but not to the point where like I feel any sort of real physiological effect other than hunger. Um, so my energy is still high. My workouts are still really good. Um, I don't think, yeah, soreness is weird. I don't actually believe that like caloric intake matters that much with soreness, because I've been through preps just like yourself, and even when I'm down to like 50% of my regular caloric intake, and my logbook is telling me that I'm doing like 80 or 90% just as hard as workouts, as if I'm in the prime of a bulk, and I'm not getting any more sore or even sore
Mm,
at all. So I don't really think that your food intake repairs the muscle or prevents the muscle damage any more than a better diet. I think it matters more long term for building new tissue, but in terms of just maintaining what you have and rebuilding just basic damage, I don't think it actually matters that much. Like your food intake, if your protein is decently high.
right.
Yeah, for me myself, at least, that's what I've found.
Hmm. I find it depends on like I have certain exercises that lend me to be more sore than others. Like
Your split
for
squats, buddy,
example,
they're crazy.
dude,
I
my
know.
man,
I see
that
them.
was you read my mind. I was just about to say before
Yeah,
meeting up with you just now, I came back from getting some steps in, and the whole time I'm like, man, my adductors, glutes, the top part of my it's everything sore. My whole lower body is just like messed up from yesterday's split squats. But that's universal between if I'm in a lean bulk maintenance or in a
right.
deficit. I think because I'm at the tail end of this fat loss phase, like I think it is a little bit more intense for me. I think the DOMs are a little bit more intense. And same with
Okay.
I think I'm finding that the theme is it's the exercises that that really tax me when my muscles are in their most elongated position. So like when I'm doing any kind of rowing, or it's mostly rowing, where I really like open up my scapula and let my traps and part of my lats kind of stretch forward with all that load, and I really kind of push my limits. That's where I same thing with the split squats, when I get really really deep and my all of that musculature is really under so much tension in that stretched out position. I think that's what lends me to get the sorest. And I'll kind of the way that I'll kind of modify things is same thing as you. Like I don't like changing my sets. I like that, keeping that variable consistent. But if I have to modify something, it'll be like intensity to some level. Like maybe I'll do like a couple less reps from failure if I absolutely have to. But yeah, kind of similar. I kind of have a similar approach as you as far as that goes.
Yeah.
Um, can you think of any other kind of important things around recovery that we might have skipped over? I know we talked about nutrition, we talked a little bit about supplements, we talked about sleep, stress, DOMS. What do you think? Do you think we kind of hit all the big points, or is there any
I can go
any that
through a
you have
couple.
listed?
Yeah, I can go through a couple things really quick if you want.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, so we went through sleep. That's, I think, the most important thing. Make sure that's in order. Figure out how to sleep better if you're not more consistent. As far as diet's concerned, like your calories are what's most important, being at the right level for recovery. And then beyond that, your macros need to be on point. Specifically, protein is probably the most important. Aiming for somewhere around like 1 gram per pound of lean body weight. So if you subtract your body fat off of your weight, give or take 1 gram per pound. It can be less, it can be more based on taste and habits. It's fine, close enough. Micronutrients obviously matter too. Without getting kind of a blood panel done and stuff like that, you might not know where you sit. But I generally recommend for everybody to take creatine because it's cheap and it works. Um, and to take vitamin D3, especially if you're Canadian, you're gonna miss out on vitamin D at some point in your life. It's just the nature of the weather up here, so you should probably take some during the winter. You can get your blood levels checked if you're not sure if you're deficient, but you probably are deficient. Um, yeah, we went over training volume, making sure that your training volume is adequate to your ability to recover. Um, Not only that, but each muscle individually will have a different capacity for adaptation to stress. So some people have muscles that just tolerate intensity really well. They can train 30 sets a week on their legs and still grow. Some people can do a third of that, and that's completely fine. As long as you're staying within your ability to recover, you will make progress if you're trending with more and more volume over time. Um, I also think that your training age is important. So, how long you've been training. There's a really big difference in how hard I'm working my body in year one versus year 17. In year one, I was probably benching anywhere from 75 to 100 pounds on the barbell. That's the barbell plus just about nothing on it. Um, and now I'm doing, anywhere from 250 plus depending on the day for sets. So obviously that's much harder to recover from. Yes, I have more muscle tissue, more adaptation, but it's still more overall capacity that's harder on your body, harder on your joints, your tendons and all that. So the more advanced you become, you might find that you actually have to train less. And that's completely normal and okay. Some people are the opposite. They can train more and more volume over time and recover. That's purely genetic probably, or maybe they're training in a different methodology, which is fine. But the most important thing is that you're just progressing over time, whatever that means
Yeah.
for you.
I like that,
Yeah.
and that your volume is determined by your ability to recover, and that can be an
Yeah.
individual thing. I love that. I'm thinking too, like this is one of my this is a concept that I think holds true for most people, which is individuals that are newer to training. This is in alignment with what you just said. So, like new lifters or even intermediates, I think that they can get away with more volume because of things like you noted, like your background when you first started doing the bench press, for example. It wasn't a ton of load. It was really challenging for you. It was challenging. It was a ton of load for you back then, but overall it probably wasn't super damaging. So you could get away with being able to recover because it wasn't as damaging overall. And then also there's the whole newbie gains thing. So like I mean, in that state, a newer lifter is going to adapt very quickly and will gain muscle tissue quite quickly for the first stretch of their lifting journey. But not only that, I think that a lot of newer lifters and even intermediate lifters can benefit from doing higher volumes, not just because of those reasons, but also because there's a practice component. It's like lifting weights is also a skill. And it's like anything else. It's like my background is with music. So I think about like comparing playing a musical instrument to lifting weights. It's like, well, if you want to get good at the piano, you spend more hours practicing efficiently. And in the beginning, you can't really practice efficiently. You kind of you have to learn how to practice efficiently, and that takes time and that takes hours. So you can spend more hours doing it to learn that. And then when you become a more advanced musician, then maybe you don't need to practice as much because you're spending your time more efficiently with the less time that you have. So I think that kind of goes in alignment with lifting. It's like maybe you benefit from training with higher volumes. A lot of people, not everyone. I guess it shouldn't be a blanket statement, but newer lifters, intermediates maybe benefit from having extra practice with the extra volume. And then, like you noted, when you get really strong, the sets become more damaging. So you kind of have to veer back on volume for a lot of more advanced lifters. But on top of kind of having to, if you're training super hard, train a little bit less, we're also able to train more efficiently because we've had all the practice of training with all the volume that we've trained with in our backgrounds. So I think that kind of it seems to make logical sense because I'm actually like where I am right now, my volume is significantly lower than it was like even 6 or 7 years ago. And it's not because I don't like training as much. I still love it. If not, I love it more. But it's all the same reasons as you mentioned. Like body is just as you get stronger, lifting is more damaging in certain ways. You need to recover from that. And also just from learning how to make more of the sets that we are able to do. They're just more efficient. We can be more stimulative with the fewer sets that we're doing. So cool. What what do you think? Can you think of any other points? I think we hit some. I think we hit some good ones.
Yeah, like we already talked about life stress. That was something on my list. Try to minimize it, whatever you can do. Pay attention to your activity outside of the gym. That might impact your ability to recover. If you have a really hard physical laborious job, don't expect to be able to train like a gym bro that just trains as a lifestyle or as a career even. Yeah, that's pretty much it, I think.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Well, maybe we'll probably both think about things once we wrap up. But I think I think we covered a lot, and I hope that everyone who's listening found this to be helpful. Um, so yeah, thanks for talking about this stuff with me,
of course.
Jean-Yves. And again, we'll have to do it again. We'll pick another topic and we can
Yeah,
brainstorm ideas and talk about natural bodybuilding stuff, fitness stuff, building muscle stuff. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun. So everyone who's watching, if you enjoyed the video, please go ahead and hit the like button. Consider subscribing to the channel as well if you enjoyed it. It really helps me out. Thank you again, Jean-Yves, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.